Welcome to Deep Thought, Bohemian and Intelligentsian indicators. Yeah, I said I'd go a little bit deeper into this subject because, I gave you a general overview of it, but then there's some indicators that you can really spot to give you an idea if the person you're dealing with is either more Bohemian or more Intelligentsian, right? I'll start with the Intelligentsians and stuff. They're a little bit easier to spot. Now, keep in mind, as I said, everybody has both. Every single person has both. And you're only going to have extreme cases where someone is like 90% of one and, 10% of the other. Like, if you're going to talk about extreme cases, like an extreme Intelligentsian might be a nun. Or somebody who's just sexually cut off and they're good with it. Like, they don't have any sexual desire for anybody. That's extreme. And just to I know some people will say, well, maybe, that's their choice or they're sexual. Every living being, if you don't interfere with them, has a desire to reproduce. If you don't interfere with them. But that's what's usually happened. There's usually something that happened and people think it's like a natural thing and it really isn't. Very few things in our personalities are natural things. Right. In fact, that's yet another video to do. It's interesting, just as an aside, a lot of stuff that I've covered in maybe paid videos or something on my main channel was very deep and metaphysical in nature. People don't realize that. So that's something I'm going to think about that one. But anyway, right? Ooh, oh yeah. Wait till I go yin and yang, or yin and yang. Anyway, right? Anyway, so you're talking to, with the Intelligentsians, it's an extreme would be a nun. With a Bohemian, extreme would be a prostitute, or just what people would call a sex addict. I say that it's more of a sex addict. Prostitutes have some control over their sex drive, but that's still Bohemian. But like, that person who's just, the word is yes no matter where it is. I mean, like I knew this this young lady, and she looked average, but she was extreme Bohemian. And I even told her one time, I said, shoot, do you ever say the word no to anybody? Like anybody, literally. This is a woman, oh man. It's like every time you have a conversation, it's almost every male that's dealt with her or come across her path, she's done something with. Like almost literally every male. Right? And yeah, me too. So, I'm just like, wow. That's extreme. There's like no breaks. Anyway, right? The Reverend Intelligentsian, right? Their main thing is a subdued sexual presence, right? They don't have that erotic side to them. And here's the interesting thing, because, you get a lot of people when you're talking about relationships, they always say, well, if you look beautiful or you're handsome or anything, you'll get mates. Plenty of Intelligentsians, plenty of them are physically attractive. More have the bone structure and everything. But they don't give off an erotic vibe. They don't get you hot sexually. And see, a lot of times I get in these conversations with guys especially, and they'll say, oh yeah, it's just looks. But if that dude have a handsome face, but he's Intelligentsian, he's going to have trouble getting women. He's going to have trouble closing the deal because a woman's not turned on sexually by the man. And that's a key thing with women. So, and then you get some women and people say, you look real pretty and stuff. Like I knew this woman, she lived in this building I lived in. She was like a Southern Belle type, right? Classic. Blonde hair, blue eyes, slim. And she was very friendly, but it was hard. You didn't get excited. Most guys who saw her didn't get excited. They could say she was pretty, but they didn't get excited about it because she dressed very conservatively and she didn't give off that air. And then it's funny, there was another woman in the building who was an actual escort that looked similar and similar body build. You just see her casually and everything go haywire in you. You like, ping! And she was definitely Bohemian. She was interesting. Now, like I said in the last one, the dress code deflects people away from them. Deflects people. You're not going to get in a sexual mindset with the way they dress. You're not going to wear those tight clothes or push-up bras or 5-inch heels and everything, right? And the dress code is probably the best indicator. Now, as I said in the last video I did about this, that's still tricky because, most jobs you still have to dress a certain way, but it can still be tough. Like, I was on this one job and it was with a Bohemian. And because the Bohemians, they wear their clothes to draw sexual attention to them. And I remember there was a young lady, very talented, but an older woman on the job had to take her to the side and say, look, you talented, but you need to tone down in how you dress. And I'll never forget that when this young lady started toning down her dress, she started moving up in the company. Because she was a very hard worker. She had worked under me. Extremely hard worker. But, she came to work dressed like she was ready to fuck. In fact, she had told me that guys on the street would just randomly offer her money for sex. So when she changed, but she was Bohemian though. And plus I knew something because somebody, she was alone with me one time and somebody's looking at me laughing and say, hey, did you do something with her? I was like, nah, man, we on the job, bro. But that dress code is the best indication. But like I said, there's some nuances with it, right? Now, understand that if you're too far over, like the good range is like a 60-40 thing, whichever way you go, that you fairly functional. And if you totally balance like 50-50, which some people think they are, but they really ain't. But if you ever get to that 50-50, hey, that's perfect. Or as the closest you can get to balanced, the better you are. Because as an aside, any relationship to really succeed or even have a chance has to have both. Any relationship. Now, in dysfunction, these are the indicators that you're going to know that these are dysfunctions, these are coping mechanisms, right? Now, the signs of dysfunction, if you get somebody who's really into porn, that's a sign that they're intelligentian. Because they're not doing it themselves and stuff, so they're going to watch it more. I'll use myself as an example. I said I'm more Bohemian. I'm a little bit closer to that middle now. I'm not at the middle. I'm a little bit closer now, but that came with age. But because of that, I've never in my life got into porn. Or even, you don't get into it as much. You might get some actors or something who are actually performing, they're Bohemian, but the people who watch and the people making the porn industry go are Intelligentsians because they're not getting that fulfillment otherwise. Perversion. You get some perverts or something, they likely Intelligentsia. Like you just get somebody on some sick ass shit, Because the thing with the sexual energy, you can try to suppress it, but it comes out in a weird way. Now, in the last video I did, I misspoke when I said the Bohemians, I would never want a Bohemian around my child. Really still don't. But I would be more concerned with somebody that appears to be Intelligentsian. Because it comes out, like I said, it comes out in weird ways. And in fact, many of these sexual subcultures got a lot of Intelligentsians, believe it or not. Because they need something to let that energy go. Another dysfunction is sexual anorexia. Basically, that's just not even 1.5 sex. And I don't mean in terms of a political thing. Your desire just ain't there for anybody. If you got that, that's a major thing. Amoraphobia. You just don't want to love anything like that. To the greatest degree that exists, that person's probably intelligentsian. Pay attention to the folks who don't want to interact with the opposite sex, just on a normal basis, like just absolute, like don't necessarily hate them, but don't want to interact. Look for that. Impotence, right? Your joint, especially you're a man. If you're a man and you just can't get it up, really, that's your spirit don't want to interact with women, and that's an intelligentsian thing. Like anytime you see it, like on some level, that's just a particular woman. But if it's just women in general, oh no, you need to deal with that issue, because part of the thing in interacting with the opposite sex or whoever you're going to interact with, you have to in your spirit want to deal with them, right? And where the man will have the impotence, the woman will have the frigidity. Now, frigidity just means just cold. She just can't really get turned on by a man. Like a man, he could be that ideal, like tall, muscular, handsome, even have sex appeal with other women, but he just can't turn this woman on. And even some players have come across it, like they might try, but they just frigid, they cold. They can't get turned on. That's a sign. That's a strong sign. Obesity. Weight gain is really more emotional than natural. You do have some people with larger muscles, which is really what it is. They'll say big bone, but it's really larger muscles. But any significant weight gain is a sign of, especially in women, because the key for a woman to attract a man is her body. The key for a man to attract a woman is his body. Now, if you get somebody who got a nice slim body, you see it mostly with women, but they get for whatever reason, they feel, especially if it happens starting when they're young, because it can happen like you can have some trauma and stuff with women. Like maybe some abuse, molestation, or something like that, and then they allow themselves to put on weight. That's what it is subconsciously, they don't want to attract men. Whenever you see that, that's a subconscious thing. Whenever I see a weight gain, and I've told people, men and women, deal with the psychological issue of why you might have that weight gain. Now, some people, they just gonna be bigger, because sometimes they ain't always like necessarily fat. It's just muscle, They muscular and they endomorphic. This isn't the same thing. This is like no matter where you are, if you put on a significant amount of weight that hides whatever shape that you have, that's a sign. Because subconsciously you don't want to even attract the opposite sex. A lot of people talk all this different stuff about relationships, but at the base of it is the physical attraction. Also, anxieties. Anxieties stem from fears. And if you have a bunch of fears and stuff, you see somebody with a bunch of anxieties, they're likely to be intelligentsian. Now, coping mechanisms. If you see somebody who's really like a religious fanatic, like you get somebody who has a healthy relationship with their spiritual path, they cool, they ain't crazy. But you get somebody who's like absolute in it, like absolute, and the type who want to hit everybody over the head with it, and they kind of mean with it too, like you're going to go to hell and all of that. That's a sign. Any fanaticism. I mean, I had a friend, he said that about like, some of those Islamic groups. He said, really, over there's a lot of sexual repression. But seriously, check some people on some fanatic stuff and just ask about their social life. Seriously. Academia, people just get into more intelligent pursuits and everything. Right? That's a coping mechanism. Anything that kind of takes you away from interacting with the opposite sex. An obsession with money. You'll get a lot of that. Those are coping mechanisms. You have the other issue, so you jump into other stuff. Especially in Intelligentsians, one of the reasons they call it Intelligentsians because they'll try to emphasize their intellect. So that's the basic thing. And look where I am. I mean, like I said, this is shoot. We can do. Yeah, this is deep because there's still another level I can like go into that's related to this. All right, but anyway, we get to the Bohemians right now. I already talked about their dress code. They trying to attract attention to them. All right. That's the man or woman who wear like those tight shirts or, some of those dudes who wear some sweatpants or something, make sure their print is showing. Or those women who wear that tight stuff. Now, the dysfunctions, they quicker for it. If you're dealing with a Bohemian, you got a stronger chance for infidelity, that person cheating. If you're a man or a woman, you get a mate and you can recognize that they're Bohemian, you got a strong chance that there's going to be a tendency towards it. Now, if they got some level of will or some other incentive not to cheat, but usually the thing with a Bohemian, when they come across a sexually enticing person, most of the time they're going to say yeah. Now, the closer they can get to the center and exercise some intelligentsia control, if they can bring that up, ain't as bad. They might think about it. They got some shit to lose. But you get the extreme ones, the more 70% type of ones, is 70% part of their spirit. Oh yeah, it's pretty much there. And if it's 80, just decide to have an open relationship if you want to have it, because they're gonna fuck, right? There's tendencies also towards incest. There's no control. That's the thing. There's a loss of control. They don't even make the decision. It's about what feels good at the time. So it's like you still don't want to have a Bohemian babysitting your child. And in fact, in many cultures, it was only the older people in a family that were allowed to babysit a child, like elders. And even then, I got some horror stories from women talking about some older man molesting them. It's that deep, And prostitution, they can easily get into prostitution, right? Also, like domestic violence, because part of having a control sexually is a control over other businesses. That Bohemian is more likely to physically attack their mate. And that's men and women. Domestic violence goes both ways. The whole thought culture, exotic dancers and everything. Every time I look at some of these women. Now, some of them you see on Instagram or something. Some of them I can tell they ain't really Bohemian. But you get the ones who can show themselves all provocative and all of that, they Bohemian. Bisexuality. Big thing with some Bohemians. The more extreme they are, it's like whatever moves. It is what it is. Right? More likely. Now, that's not to say you don't get that with Intelligentsians. But everything I'm talking about in all of this are tendencies. So you got to watch that. Men obsessed with sports. Now, one thing about the Bohemians, they tend to be more physically active as a whole. And you get some guys, they more interested in all of that, in violent activities. Also, the Bohemian is going to have some level of narcissism. Like if you get somebody, if you're talking with somebody and they like, I'm the bomb, I'm this and I'm that, and they sincere, especially about their looks. Like Bohemians tend to think they look better than they actually do. And it can come off as confidence, but you're looking at them like they ain't all that. But that narcissism is big. Now, isn't that, now some people say it's a narcissistic personality disorder, and that can happen. But it could be, it's a range. Let's just say they're going to have a higher self-esteem about the impression that they make on the opposite sex. And we've seen them. You see somebody like, I'm the bomb, I'm this. Every time I see that type of person, like, oh yeah, I put in, you just looking at them like, nah, not really, though. But the narcissism, look for that. Now, they'll cope, you can't point out some of this shit to them, or they'll say, well, it's that person's fault or something like that, or they'll use money or position as a leverage. Like a lot of these dudes getting caught for sexual harassment and stuff. Bohemian. Because you talking about you doing some stuff that can lose a job. I mean, some of the shit was just like, come on. They going into places masturbating in front of a woman, and I'm like, come on, dude, really? They can't help themselves. Like extreme bohemians can have trouble keeping a job. And I've actually seen extreme bohemians on different jobs, particularly women. Like the guys, they usually just fucking everybody. And it's interesting with them because bohemians tend to have more sexual charisma. And that tend have more sexual charisma. Like the guys, they can be on some job. If there's a lot of women, they typically fucking a few of them. But then the women actually have trouble because, they walking around skimpy and everything. And, women don't like, women compete with each other. So, and, it's interesting. I'm just like, wow. Like I can still go deeper. Because, I can go into male and female sexual energy and stuff because it gets deeper. It gets deeper. I'll do that next week or something. And those are just a few of the things. Okay, if you see somebody and they intelligentsian, or you think it, look for fear, any indication of fear. All right? And the other things I mentioned. But look for fear. That's the primary thing. All right? Look for the bohemian. Look for like a loss of self-control. That's the type of person. That's the type of dude could have a good wife, everything. She attractive, but you know what? Her sister rub up against him and shit, and all of a sudden they in the bedroom. That's a bohemian. Or one thing, bohemian women, they actually not that picky. A lot of times when you see like an average, and I didn't do this in any of my videos, right? Because it gets a little deeper. But that's a very good indication. Like a bohemian woman will deal with an average man. Like you see like these very attractive women with some average men. There's a good chance she's bohemian. People think it's money, but they don't understand this whole thing. A lot of times the women find the man attractive. Because a bohemian don't have a high bar. A bohemian woman could go from a 4 to a 10 easily. And in fact, it's actually intelligentsian women who are more likely to go for like that top guy, believe it or not. And it's not always about the sex either. It's a weird nuance. There's a lot of little nuances, but the more bohemian a woman, they can go for it. Because I know a bohemian woman, she was tall, kind of had a model thing to her, very friendly with everybody. Had a husband that was shorter than her, but she was also bisexual. They more open for a wide variety. Like Nola Darling in that series I recently reviewed, She's Gotta Have was like a strong bohemian. She was down for whatever. That's a good indication. Whereas some women, like the intelligentsian type of women or men, well, I'll say the women, because I got most of the guys on here anyway. The women more likely is going to have some criteria for you. You're going to have like a certain degree, like a certain kind of objective thing. Like you got to have a degree, you got to have this and that. Whereas a bohemian woman is like, shit, you kind of cute. Seriously, it's so many little things. And of course, just remember, these are general statements. Because like I said, everybody has a mix of both. So it depends on how that mix come out. Because sometimes that mix, like somebody can be on a job and it's more the intelligentsian thing. They can seem conservative. But then they get into that sexual underworld or something. You find out they just off the chains. Like there are secret societies out there of women who just get down in parties, like orgies and stuff like that. They out there. Because a lot of times, like if they bohemian, it got to come out. But a lot of times they got, had enough discipline to get a regular job and stuff. Because like I said, the range ain't extreme. You're going to have enough of it, but you're going to have to get off with it. So anyway, right, that's it for today. Think about what I'm saying. I'll probably at some point do something about the yin and yang of energy, because that plays a big part and that ties into it. Because none of these things exist by themselves. Everything is holistic. So there's always more. Anyway, keep rising and transforming. Peace and blessings.